So the storyline for us is we really didn't want to tell a soldier story that's been done before in the World War II setting, and we really wanted to do something a little more personal. So basically the story is Sean is a race car driver turned saboteur, inspired by a real person. I always like to tell people that because it's almost unbelievable. But Sean goes over to Germany for a race right before the war, or the occupation of France happens, and he races the race, and after what seems kind of innocent goes horribly wrong and somebody close to him is killed. And so basically that sets Sean off on a quest for vengeance. And so when he flees, he goes to France and hides out, and then he kind of starts to work with the people of France and the resistance as kind of a means to an end to get to the Nazis that hurt his friends. And so he becomes a hero through all of that, and eventually, it's, like I said, his goal is ultimately vengeance. It's actually, I would say it's definitely more inspired. Like, we definitely changed the character and made our own character. There was a real driver for the French Bugatti racing team named William Grover Williams that was our inspiration point for it. One of the owners of the company read a book about him, and we're like, wow, what a crazy idea for an action hero. And so we took that as a springboard and really just started building that. So we made Sean Devlin out of that, but he's Irish. We wanted to separate him more from the war. He has no side. He's kind of a man without a home, really, in the game. And yeah, so it's this crazy idea that we just started and then researched and then just really went crazy with the character and went big and kind of like Indiana Jones, over the top, larger than life world. It's not a real world, but it's this kind of like exaggerated reality. Basically, we treat the war as like a backdrop, and it's a great time in history. Like, the occupation of France is this, it's this beautiful city, like, occupied by the probably one of the greatest groups of bad guys in the entire world. And so you have this great classic villains, but in this really interesting environment. So it was a really great place to actually get to explore. In our game, it's all of our Paris. Like, we actually built a version of Paris. It's a scaled down version of Paris. We took a map of Paris and we scaled it down and to what we felt we could fill, and then built all the monuments and put them to scale where they belonged, and then filled in the rest from there with a bunch of buildings. So you get it's like the spirit of Paris, really. But then it's not even just Paris. It goes all the way over to Germany and then up to a northern part of France as well. And then in between there's this huge countryside, and it's full of chateaus and other areas to explore and have missions. Yeah, we're definitely taking a lot of liberties with the war. We're not, we have things in, like Nazi Zeppelins. Like, they were decommissioned during the war, but they're such a great piece of like iconography that we really wanted to have them in the game. And there's little moments in the game where we're inspired by history. Like, there were Grand Prix races right before the war, and our enemy racing team, Doppelsieg, is inspired by Mercedes, and Mercedes were making war machines for the Nazi army. And so, like, we definitely took a lot of those things as influences and reference, and there's little tidbits of that in there, but we're not staying historically accurate. We wanted to go, big action, really. So yeah, absolutely, we wanted to have a bit of romance in the game. We have a very classic, we're making a period set game, or piece game, and we wanted to have some of those classic elements, so there's a little love triangle inside of the game as well. So the will to fight came from the idea of us building Paris, and the fact that we were going to build Nazi-occupied Paris. And when you think of Paris, you have this, in your head, it's this colorful, vibrant world, and it's not filled with harsh, sad times and feelings. And so we literally wanted to suck the life out of it, and that's where the black and white look came from. And really inspired by originally the Sin City comic book, to have that black and white look with the colors popping through to kind of give the player something to read. And then the movie really helped us inspire that, like, get the visual tone of what a black and white world should look like. But then when the player completes these big objectives and these missions, I like to call them grand acts of defiance, the color will bleed back out into the world, and what that'll do is inspire the people. You're not liberating the world. You're not a lone wolf, like, mopping up the Nazis out of France. You're just inspiring the people. So what will happen then is, if you have fightouts or shootouts in the streets, resistance, because you're inspiring the people, the resistance will actually show up and actually fight alongside of you. So the will to fight, yes, there's a graphical element to it, and that's the fact that the game is black and white and color, and every area in the game is black and white and color and can be changed basically as the player. Basically what make it change is when the player does these big objectives and missions, the color will then come out into the world then. I think what really sets our game apart is, one, there's obviously this distinct visual style of the game that really is something that you won't see. But then there's also this element of, it's a great sandbox where there's a lot of interesting world to explore, from the rooftops to the streets, like everywhere can be explored. And there's all kinds of different action in there. We're doing missions where missions that you normally wouldn't see in a sandbox type game. It's something you normally only see in a very level-based game, very set-piece kind of things, and scripted events and explosions and just big drama and high action. So that's the Saboteur. Will be coming out this holiday season and on the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC, and you should check it out. It's going to be an awesome game.